Oh. Good afternoon, everyone. I am Chair Janelle Wilkins. Today is February 17th, and we are beginning our bill hearings for the day. The first legislation that we will hear is House Bill 783 from the Washington County Delegation. Delegate Wyville presenting.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and congratulations. Good afternoon, everyone. It's good to be here. On behalf of the Washington County Delegation, I'm pleased to present House Bill 783 for your consideration. The bill grants a property tax exemption to property owned by Platoon 22 and used to provide veteran housing. The bill is specific to Washington County. If you go to their website, Platoon 22 states they're a nonprofit, veteran-focused service organization committed to ending veteran suicide through the fostering of meaningful connections and comprehensive support. The organization currently owns a 6 one-bedroom apartment building in Hagerstown. Every current resident was previously unhoused or transitioning from inpatient treatment and was struggling to find housing through traditional channels. Platoon 22 would like to dedicate their limited funds towards fulfillment of their mission, and this bill helps them accomplish that goal. You should have a unanimous letter of support from the Washington County Delegation, and I ask for a favorable report. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Delegate. Any questions on this bill? All right, seeing none, that ends the bill hearing on House Bill 783.
Thank you.
Delegate Morgan, I see you there, but your bill is jointly assigned, so we're waiting for some members from E&T to come over. So we'll actually go ahead and take Delegate Long if you're ready. All right, we can start with House Bill 652.
Thank you, Madam Chair. For the record, I'm Delegate Bob Long. I'm here to testify on HB 652, property tax, homestead property tax credit for first-time home buyers. As you well know, well, let me say, I've been in the real estate business for over 40 years professionally. And I've talked to buyers all the time. What is their main hurdle of them buying a house? It's closing cost. So that's what this is trying to address, is to help first-time home buyers out. You know, I know the governor has some housing bills in, and he's got the same perspective that I have, that we need to get people back in housing. You know, it is a great thing to be able to buy your first house, good tax credit. You know, you can write it off on your property taxes. One of the things I found disturbing, Maryland is number 4 in foreclosures. That's pretty tough, and that's from the Maryland Department of Housing, I believe. So basically, you have to mind me for a second. I was a little caught off guard since I got called up so quick. I see that Maryland County, well, I know they would have opposed it. Hold on for a second. Okay, it's basically, it's a tax credit for first-time home buyers. And I'm trying to remember exactly what the bill is, because I've got several of them. This one, I believe, is if they buy a house, it would transfer whatever tax credits they have. So if they have a homestead property tax and they've been there for 20 years, the new buyers would take that, they would receive the same benefit. And that's what this bill is for, I believe. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Delegate, and thank you for your flexibility. Any questions on this bill? All right, seeing none, that ends the bill hearing on House Bill 652. And Delegate Long, I will give you the option. We can we now have members from E&T here, so we can go to Delegate Morgan's bill, or we can go directly into your HB 790. What do you prefer?
I'm already sitting here, so
Okay.
half the work's done.
All right, let's go ahead. House Bill 790, state transfer tax.
Again, this is for first-time home buyers. This would exempt the first-time home buyers from state transfer tax. We actually have one in Baltimore County to help with transfer taxes. Again, people can't afford with closing costs, so on a state issue, I would like to see state state property taxes exempt from any new buyers. And I know there's some controversy about tax credits because a first-time home buyer already gets a credit because they are a first home buyer, and the seller pays a lot of it. But the thing of it is, bottom line, regardless if the state transfer tax has to be paid by someone. And usually what happens is they can add it into the closing costs, but bottom line is still the buyer still want to pay for it. And that's what this is for, is to, again, try to get people back into the market and let's start selling some houses, giving people, to live the American dream, which I was very fortunate to do, to buy my first house.
Thank you so much, Delegate, for the bill. Any questions, Delegate Ebersol?
And thank you, Delegate Long, for bringing the bill. Thank you, Madam Chair. Just real quick, I'm having a little deja vu here.
Yeah.
You have this exact bill in Baltimore County as well, is that correct?
No, sir. This is for state transfer tax, what I had in Baltimore County, which was Baltimore County transfer tax.
Okay, but okay, thank you.
And that's where it got the water got muddied because they actually quoted state income tax, or state transfer tax was actually Baltimore County.
Okay, thank you.
All right, seeing no additional questions, that ends the hearing on House Bill 790. Thank you so much, Delegate.
Thank you. I'm looking forward to a favorable vote.
We're looking forward to looking closely at both bills. Thank you so much. Next up, we will take Delegate Matt Morgan, House Bill 827. Colleagues, this bill is jointly assigned with the Environment and Transportation Committee. I want to welcome our colleagues, Delegate Long, Delegate Odom, and Delegate Naraki, who are here representing E&T. For questions, you can feel free to take any of the empty seats here if you'd like to ask a question, and thank you so much for visiting us. All right, you can go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. It's good to always see my friends on Ways and Means and friends from Environment and Transportation. Actually, on the way down here, I stopped in Environment and Transportation because I was thinking it's any other committee. Saw the bill folder said Transportation. I'm like, sat there for a second and I remember I'm supposed to be here. So good to see you guys because we're in here, not Transportation Committee, because this affects revenue. This is House Bill 827, repairing the Transportation Trust Fund. This bill does three things. It untangles or decouples CPI from the gas tax that was originally signed by the legislature in 2013. It also stops what the initiative from the Train Committee that was recently assembled a couple years ago. One of their initiatives was to install a vehicle mileage tax, one of their recommendations. This legislation would stop that. And it was also required that Maryland Transit Administration issue the historical standard of 35% eventually to fare box recovery. And the Transportation Trust Fund, we've all had projects, local projects cut. Overwhelmingly, there was some polling about a year ago that overwhelming the majority of Marylanders, I think it was 65%, wanted gas tax and money of that nature to go to roads and bridges. And what I like so much about this legislation is if you look on page 3, about 5 paragraphs down, in the fiscal note, starts with chapter 16 and 24. In there, it says, as shown in MTA's most recent report of 2024, fare box recovery rates for MTA bus, light rail, heavy rail, subway, and commuter rail costs were 6.6, 4.6, 2.3, and 12.3 respectively. So that means like a system like light rail only has a fare box recovery of 2.3. That means that everyone else is subsidizing at 97% of their operating costs. That's crazy. Right now, 65% of the Transportation Trust Fund goes to mass transit. but very few people utilize it in the state, and that doesn't really seem fair in my eyes. This would put it back into a more equitable situation that we had back in 2018. And if you look, the state's always needing revenue. Well, this brings in $129 million of revenue by 2031, and it's because we're just making riderships of mass transit actually pay for their rides. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any question, Madam Speaker, or Madam Chair.
Any questions? Yes, go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry, don't push back.
There you go.
I'm sorry. Different hour committee, I apologize for coming in and wrecking things already.
He thinks he's the vice chair.
I'm just happy to be next to you, sir.
Yeah.
Good to see you, Mr. Vice Chair.
For the record, I'm Delegate Naraki from the Environment and Transportation Committee. Delegate, thank you for the bill. One question that I have is how this would affect fare box recovery for the MARC train system in particular. So I think I'm reading that it affects all of the MTA, heavy rail included, but I just want to make sure of that.
Yep.
One of the issues that I've had with taking a fare box recovery amount off system-wide is that the average income level for a MARC train rider well exceeds $100,000 per year. And I think it's not fair to not expect some of those folks to pay their fair share with respect to their MARC train ridership. So I just want to make sure that this would apply to that service as well.
Yeah, I'm glad you asked me that question. Thank you for the question, Delegate, because I made a slight misstatement in my original statement here. Light rail is at 4.6, not 2.3. Heavy rail is at 2.3. So it's heavily, heavily subsidized. It's subsidized at almost, well, a little over 97%. And this would return it back to the historical standard and account for some of the revenues lost there.
Okay. Thank you, Delegate.
Thank you.
I'll touch the buttons.
Thank you so much. Any other questions? All right.
Appreciate it,
Seeing
Madam Chair.
none,
Thank you
thank
so
you,
much.
Delegate, for the bill. That ends the bill hearing on House Bill 827. We will go back to House Bill 846. Delegate Schindler presenting our Washington County Delegation Bill, Property Tax, City of Hagerstown, and the Hagerstown Multi-Use Sports and Events Facility.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, honorable members of the committee, for the record, my name is Delegate Matthew J. Schindler, and I'm here to present House Bill 846 on behalf of the Washington County delegation. House Bill 846 is a local bill intended to codify and clarify the tax-exempt status of two public-oriented sports and event venues in Washington County. These facilities operate as community amenities. They host youth athletics, school events, community gatherings, and regional competitions that bring families together and visitors into our downtown. While they function in the public interest, their tax status has not been clearly codified in the statute. HB 846 provides that clarity. It ensures these venues are treated consistently with their public purpose and removes uncertainty that could otherwise undermine their financial stability. These facilities are not profit-driven enterprises. Their goal is to operate responsibly, break even over the long term, and continue to serve our community. Providing this exemption supports their sustainability and reinforces the broader revitalization efforts underway in our community. It also ensures continued access to safe, structured sports and recreation opportunities for our city's youth. And with that, I would respectfully urge a favorable report on HB 846.
Thank you, Delegate. Any questions? All right, thank you for the bill, and that ends the bill hearing on House Bill 846. Next, we'll go to Delegate Jones, House Bill 644, Property Tax Exemption for Dwellings of Surviving Spouses. Yes, please.
Please, thank you. Let me just get settled. Thank you so much, Chairwoman. And friends, I mean members of the Ways and Means Committee, it is wonderful to see all of you and be back. For the record, I'm Delegate Dana Jones, representing District 30A in the House of Delegates. I'm here today to introduce HB 644, Property Tax Exemption for Dwellings of Surviving Spouses of Disabled Veterans application. This also, I think, is one of the longest bill titles I have ever had. The purpose of this legislation is to provide an alternative method for verification to qualify for the surviving spouse property tax exemption under 7-208 of the property tax article. Before I get into the details, I just want to level set. Let's describe the necessity of this legislation. At present, we are excluding surviving spouses who should be eligible for this exemption based on what is already in statute. Current law defines a surviving spouse as someone who receives dependency and indemnity compensation, DIC. Current law also defines disabled veteran as someone who qualifies posthumously for 100% service-connected disability. However, the VA does not currently qualify veterans posthumously. If they are deemed to have passed from service-connected illness, their surviving spouse would receive DIC. Therefore, by allowing surviving spouses to use DIC paperwork to qualify, we are meeting the intent of the law and preventing qualifying surviving spouses from being excluded from this important financial benefit. Currently, this section of law provides for a property tax exemption to surviving spouses of disabled veterans, surviving spouses of those who died in the line of duty, surviving spouses of those who received dependency and indemnity compensation from the United States Department of Veteran Affairs. Additionally, as defined in law, a disabled veteran includes an individual who qualifies posthumously for 100% service-connected disability. The legislation, if I haven't put you to sleep, the legislation before you today seeks to align the definition section with the eligibility criteria in statute. It will do so by allowing dependency indemnity compensation paperwork as acceptable documentation for the purposes of qualification. In doing so, this will prevent surviving spouses who would be eligible based on definitions of disabled veteran and surviving spouses from being excluded from this benefit despite clearly meeting the legislative intent of the statute. This issue came to me in a very similar manner as it came to now Chairwoman Valderrama, who most recently introduced somewhat similar legislation in 2023. One of my constituents came to me frustrated at the discrepancy in the law. Her husband passed away from lung cancer that resulted from asbestos connected to his service in the United States Coast Guard. After his death, the Veterans Administration granted her eligibility for dependency and indemnity compensation, confirming that her husband's cancer was connected to his service and the cause of his death. This would qualify her as a surviving spouse per the definition in the statute. But the DIC paperwork she received, which attests to his service-connected death, would not qualify as appropriate documentation to grant her the exemption. This is in direct conflict with the legislative intent of the statute due to the discrepancy between the definition and eligibility documentation. Simply put, Maryland is excluding widows who should rightfully receive this benefit. I am proud to have the support of the Maryland's Veterans Caucus, and I want to thank the Maryland Military Coalition for joining me today to testify in favor of this necessary and common sense change. With that, I'm happy to answer any questions the committee may have, and I would respectfully request a favorable report from the committee for HB 644. Thank you so much, Chairwoman.
Thank you so much, Delegate, for bringing this bill. I see a question from Delegate Griffith.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thanks for bringing this bill. So I guess my question is, so under this law right now, Gold Star spouses are only even eligible for this program for 2 years after the serving spouse's death. So this bill would be a pretty light lift to pass because we're only asking for these individuals to be included for a 2-year period that may be left out right now, correct?
That is my understanding, yes. Thank you for agreeing.
So yeah, I think this seems like a pretty light lift and a pretty easy thing to do. So thank you for bringing the bill.
Thank you so much. Chairwoman, we also have a little bit more testimony.
Oh, I apologize. Please go ahead.
Madam Chair and distinguished members of this committee, my name is David Lutzow, Senior Master Sergeant, retired United States Air Force, and a Military Coalition Director. HB 923, submitted during the 2022 session, added the criteria using the DIC documentation from the United States Department of Veteran Affairs. And HB 433, submitted during the regular 2023 session, allowed for the submission of surviving spouses of disabled veterans defined in 38 U.S. Code Section 105 to submit their DIC paperwork instead of a VA certification issued to disabled veterans. The Department of Veteran Affairs now states that the benefit summary letter is in fact a veteran's rating decision, and such letter serves as a certificate or certification. Definition terms, specific language, they do matter. Some of us may be confused and deny applications submitted by surviving spouses because the certificate has not been submitted when the veteran's rating decision is actually the certificate. Surviving spouses are not only dealing with significant grief, but they often experience frustration when dealing with the VA. Having the understanding between a certificate and a rating decision letter should not add additional frustration. 644 makes clear the rating decision letter is acceptable and may be used by surviving spouses. For this reason, the Maryland Military Coalition asked for a favorable report for 644, and we'd like to thank Delegate Jones for bringing this bill.
Thank you so much. Thank you for your testimony. Delegate Buckle with a question.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I really appreciate that clarification because it just makes complete sense to me to suggest that we're just not interpreting something correctly. I was concerned. I looked at the fiscal note, and I'm sure Delegate Jones did, and it talks about this decrease in revenues because more people will qualify, presumably, may require either an increase in the state property tax rate, which no one should be for, or a general fund appropriation to cover debt services on the general obligation bonds, which no one should be for. No. But what it sounds to me, I mean, I kind of want to just throw this away because what we're saying is these are people who already should be qualifying for this but are getting caught up kind of in a loophole that we just want to clarify. So can you go to that? Like, no one wants to vote for something that will cause us to raise property tax rates, but that's not what we're really doing here. I think this is disingenuous. Not the bill, the fiscal note suggesting that it's going to cause all this kind of problem.
Well, thank you so much, Delegate Buckle, and it is my opinion that you have one of the best Vietnam Army veterans in your very district.
This is your father, yeah?
Yes, Philip Jones.
He's in Delegate Heinebaugh's district.
Well, but he counts all of you, actually. With all due respect, and I would love to talk offline to anyone who has a question on this fiscal note. With all due respect, I do not see how they got this number in this fiscal note at all. I think they took a raw number and multiplied it by something else, which, so the fiscal note, obviously, I'm a little discouraged by, but in all honesty, I don't agree with, would love to talk more, but do you have anything to add?
And if there's surviving spouses that already should be qualified.
That's right.
I mean, we're not creating a new classification. We're just clarifying for people who are deserving of the existing benefit.
Correct.
You shouldn't have to jump this other loophole.
For families who have already given so very much, not only as wonderful Marylanders, but to our country.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Delegate. Let's go to Delegate Polakovich-Carr.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Delegate Jones, for this very well-intentioned bill. Okay, I just want to drill down a little bit further based off of the further questions we've gotten so far. So is it your intention with this bill, you're just trying to clarify about the type of paperwork that has to be provided, but not necessarily change the 2-year time frame that's in statute? Is that correct? I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I'm just trying to understand that piece because I have a little bit of a different read on that 2-year time frame than perhaps a previous question.
Yes. It is my intent that those, that actually the intent of the law, and I think it is the spirit of the law, that these surviving spouses be eligible for this. So it is clarification that they would not be left out.
Okay, so I think I'm still a little bit unclear because my read of the existing statute on that 2-year time frame, and I think Mako points out in their informational testimony, is leaving me a little ambiguous on this, but maybe we can connect off.
I would love to do that. I would love to connect offline.
Okay, any other questions? All right, seeing none, that ends the bill hearing on House Bill 644.
I appreciate it. Thank you very
Delegate.
much.
Okay, up next, House Bill 840. I know Delegate Edelson is with the new baby and is sending wonderful staff member to testify. So if you could please state your name for the record, and you can proceed when you're ready. I understand that there is also one person signed up.
Yes.
Okay, all right, go ahead, thank you.
I would love if that person could perhaps join me. Oh, here he is. Good afternoon, Chair Wilkins and esteemed members of the committee. For the record, my name is Marley Mielich, here presenting on HB 840 on behalf of Delegate Edelson. He's sorry he couldn't be here, but as I'm sure you all know, he and his wife just welcomed their newest addition, and he's at home on dad duty. According to the Small Business Administration, over 97% of Maryland businesses are considered small businesses. It goes without saying that small businesses are the lifeblood of neighborhoods and communities, particularly those that are designated as arts and entertainment districts, and in addition to our state's main streets. The state created these programs to revitalize communities, promote tourism, and boost local downtowns and neighborhoods by strengthening their economic potential. Ever since the pandemic, our communities are fighting an excess of vacant commercial properties, inhibiting revitalization and the long-term economic growth of our communities. The existing tools are often not enough to alter the behavior of the owners of these vacant spaces. The owners are incentivized to hold onto vacant properties in the hopes of profiting from long-term development plans that may or may not happen. In the meantime, the communities are not benefiting from the vacant spaces as a viable part of the neighborhood economy. This bill would add a new tool and a new incentive for owners to put the property back into the hands of small businesses that contribute to the economic vitality of our neighborhoods. The bill expands the existing benefits of the arts and entertainment districts and Main Street programs. The tax incentive in the bill is totally voluntary for each jurisdiction and is designed to be tailored to their specific needs. It is incumbent upon the state to provide the tools necessary for local jurisdictions to address the economic drag of vacant properties. With this, I'd like to turn it over to Delegate Edelson's sponsor panel for their testimony and for any questions, and Delegate Edelson would respectfully urge a favorable report on HB 840.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members. Kevin Canale here on behalf of the Maryland Association of Counties in support of House Bill 840. You heard all about the bill, great job explaining the bill. We appreciate that this bill is enabling and provides proper flexibility so that we can address things like vacancy and blight locally. It's another tool in the toolbox. It's smart, it makes sense, and we support the bill and we'd ask for a favorable report. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Any questions on this bill? Delegate Young.
Quick question. Thank you, Madam Chair. I don't see in the bill a definition of small business. It might be somewhere else in the law. Would you all be able to put that on the record for us?
I believe it does. I believe the bill points to another section. I can follow up with you and make sure that we have that for you.
Understood. Thank you so much. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Delegate. And that concludes the hearing. And also on behalf of the entire committee, congratulations to the Edelson family.
Yeah. I'll let him know. Thank you so much.
Woo. All right, that ends House Bill 840. Next up, Delegate Solomon, the Building Homes Act, House Bill 805. Yes, please do.
Good afternoon, everybody. It's nice to be in the Ways and Means Committee before the new Madam Chair. Congratulations again. I am here, for the record, Delegate Jared Solomon, to present House Bill 805, the Building Homes Act. And I'm joined by a couple of folks from Habitat for Humanity and our great partners at MACO. And they're going to get, our Habitat partners are going to get into the real sort of nitty gritty, but I'll just kind of explain this at a high level. So I think, the worst kept secret that we all know is we're in a housing crisis in the state, both a housing crisis and a housing affordability crisis. And so I think many of us are looking working not only at the state level, but at our local levels, all about different solutions and different ways that we can try to fix the issue. So what I have before you is an enabling bill that does not cost the state anything, which is give counties the authority to give essentially a tax break to nonprofit developers like Habitat for Humanity who are doing really incredible work. And the way that we sort of came across this was really through a quirk and a really wonderful local project that we supported. If you're ever in Montgomery County and you happen to find your way to Wheaton, would wholeheartedly invite you to come look at Allium Place, which is really sort of the first of its kind in Montgomery County and in the state, but a really wonderful representation of what the private sector, nonprofit sector, and government working together can do. So we took a pretty sizable parcel that was not really being used for anything. It was an old, literally a storage facility for Montgomery County Rec Department. It had been a theater way back. And it's now a whole new thriving part of our community. And what happened there was working with a major affordable housing developer, nonprofit in the region, AH, we built 2 sort of high-rise rental units, but then in partnering with Habitat for Humanity, we were able to build 24 homeown units. So of that, 21 are condos, 3 are actual single-family homes. And what they did was, by working together, the builder was able to, through economy of scale, build not only significant affordable rental housing, but also units for home ownership as well. And it's really fantastic. There's a child care center there. There's wraparound support services for families. The stories of folks who are living there is just amazing. Folks who never thought they would be able to either own their own home or find affordable housing in that part of our county. But what we discovered in working with Habitat was the tax rate that they have to pay, the assessed tax, because Habitat does not artificially depress the cost of their homes, is actually essentially at the fully assessed value of what any home in that neighborhood would be assessed at, even though that's not really what the homeowner is being charged. So in Montgomery County, we have an MPDU program for affordable homes, and the county locks in essentially a lower rate, 30%, whatever it is, and that is what is actually recorded. It's 30% of whatever the market rate would be for that home. That's what's recorded when the home is sold. Again, Habitat sells the property, or the property is recorded at essentially what is the market value for the home. But when Habitat turns around and sells it to the folks who participate in the process, and they'll talk more about how that works, but I think a lot of us are sort of familiar with it. You have to put sweat equity in, and there's a whole process that folks go through. That homeowner through Habitat is probably only paying 20 or 30% of the actual value. And then Habitat sort of keeps like a second mortgage almost on the books, or a cost on the books to say we're covering the rest of it. And then they have a covenant or a legally binding agreement with that homeowner that says if you sell it within 20 years, right, you are going to pay us back to cover that second mortgage. It purposely locks in the fact that these are not homes where people can really make a profit. It's meant to create a pathway to wealth and a pathway to homeownership. But on the downside, because SDAT has no idea that these homes are sort of part of an agreement, a longstanding agreement with Habitat or similar types of developers, they just see what is recorded when the home is sold and say, we're going to assess that at essentially what the market rate is. What that means is if Habitat locks in you as an individual paying only 30% of the cost, they have to then eat more of the cost to pay that tax. So what this bill does, and I know that seems complicated, what this bill does is it enables local jurisdictions to say, we will create a local tax credit to essentially give back at the end of that first year of ownership to Habitat or the similar nonprofit developer, and as it's spelled out in the bill, it just sort of lays out the parameters. It doesn't specifically name a Habitat. It says, if your sale price of the home to this individual was 30% of its market value, and obviously we taxed you on the full value, we could give you up to 70% of that back. And again, this is not going to be a panacea, but if Habitat or a similar developer is building 20 or 30 homes in a region, and obviously in Montgomery County, it's Habitat of Metro Maryland, that's enough to maybe build another 2 or 3 homes per year. And what we heard from folks across the state is, again, this is not going to be a panacea. It's not going to solve our housing crisis, but it's another sort of arrow in the quiver, another tool in the toolbox to allow for a few more homes to be built, specifically, obviously, aiding folks who can't necessarily afford a market rate. Again, this does not have a fiscal note attached to it. We worked really closely with SDAT over the interim. I think if I were king for a day, we may have designed a little bit of a different program, but SDAT was a really wonderful partner in sort of describing to us if we had done things differently, what that process could have created, would have probably meant a significant staff burden on SDAT. We also worked obviously with MACO. Again, we want to give counties the opportunity. And I think what's really important to know about this is, when you think about the parcel in Montgomery County and a lot of the units that Habitat often redevelops, they're not necessarily parcels or homes that are productively in use. So there may be vacant homes where there's nothing going on, right? Or in the instance that I talked about in Montgomery County with Allium Place, that was a vacant parcel of land. It is now a thriving new hub, basically, in Wheaton to allow families to move in. So when you think about the one-time tax break that we may be giving to organizations like Habitat to build more homes, the long run is we are bringing in substantial new tax revenue for local jurisdictions in the state. And the more homes that we can redevelop, the more vacant parcels that we can bring into active use, the more tax revenue you're going to see across the board. The last thing I will say, sorry for talking so long, is there's a letter of support in here from DHCD. We also worked with them, and there is a sign-on letter that I'm not sure we uploaded, but we will share with the committee from Habitat chapters from across the state for their support and help with the bill. So we'll urge a favorable report and happy to turn it over to our sponsor panel as well. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Chair and committee members, and thank you, Delegate Solomon, for really your leadership on this bill. My name is Sarah Redinger. I'm with Habitat for Humanity Metro Maryland, and we serve Montgomery and Prince George's counties. And we are hyper-focused on providing access to and the preservation of affordable home ownership specifically. We are a builder, so we build single-family homes, condo communities, as you've heard, at Allium Place, townhome communities. We also renovate a lot of vacant, distressed properties. And all of the homes that we build and we renovate, we sell to income-qualified families that are living and working in our communities, but cannot access the traditional market, right? Homes are too expensive, interest rates are high, down payments are high. There's a confluence of a lot of things that make homeownership out of reach and keep the idea of building generational wealth from these families that have should have every opportunity to own a home. And so Habitat for Humanity is also a lender. We've been around since 1982, and since then we've provided over $19 million in 0% interest mortgages that we've financed on our own and underwritten. But what's really challenging, as you've heard about building affordable home ownership, is that it requires a pretty significant subsidy per unit. And so we are layering in, sometimes county donated land and properties, private foundation funds, tax credits, government contracts, all sorts of different things to try and figure out how to make that house affordable for our buyers. So typically we're providing a first mortgage that's payable every month, just like everyone's, that's affordable to the buyers. And then to make sure that we're not bringing down property values, we also have a silent second mortgage that's repaid upon sale. So ultimately the sales price is the appraised value, but it's split between two mortgages, one that's affordable for them to pay, one that's repaid upon sale. That helps to protect the subsidy that goes into each home and also prevent flipping in addition to not depressing property values. And so trying to figure out how to stack all of the subsidy together is really challenging, as I've mentioned, and this property tax credit could be a huge help in layering that subsidy stack, and then also making sure that our fundraising can help us build more houses. And just for an example on the Allium Place project, sorry.
You can just finish your thought and wrap up, please.
Thank you. So for Allium Place, those condos, they are appraised for about $390,000. And a lot of them we're selling for between $150,000 and $220,000 to make sure they're affordable. So the property taxes are pretty significant for what we're selling them for. Thank you.
Good afternoon. And let me get this mic here. Thank you, Chair, and thank you for the opportunity to speak today. My name is Layla Kohler-Frew, and I'm the Vice President of Homeowner Services and Community Relations at Habitat Chesapeake. Our affiliate service area is in Central Maryland, extending from Baltimore County to Howard County, Baltimore City, and Anne Arundel County. We've built over 800 homes for home buyers in the 30 to 80% of the area median income. That's who we sell to. And we're currently in development of over 40 other homes. That's a combination of new construction, rehab, et cetera, echoing a lot of what my colleague Sarah said. We offer our home buyers a zero-interest mortgage and cap their initial mortgage payments so that they are no more than 30% of household income. In doing this, our home buyers have a truly affordable mortgage. Our program is geared for first-time home buyers and requires that they help work alongside of us, which we may be familiar with, but I'll walk through it a little bit. So they may build on their own home or a neighbor's home. They might work in one of our restores, or they might participate in community events like cleanups or preparing a pocket park that the community has decided to undertake. So we call it sweat equity. And 50 hours of it is home buyer education. This includes budgeting and even home maintenance and civic engagement. We tell our homeowners to change their voter registration the moment they take their keys to their new home. In order to achieve affordability, back on this part of our program, there are a few gaps that we manage as an organization, which Sarah illustrated, and I'll continue to underline. The first is an appraisal gap, where the appraisal might come in lower than the actual cost of construction. And the second is the affordability gap for our home buyers. So to explain, we could have a home appraised at $250,000, and I'm just making these figures up, but the homeowner's affordability is for a home at $200,000. What our program does is sell the homes based on the appraisal, but we do so by providing a second mortgage to cover that $50,000 affordability gap. Our mortgages have 30-year term limits. Yes, okay. So what I'd like to say is that this bill proposes a property tax credit that would enable us to be able to put more funds into building the next home, and I would respectfully request that you support the Building Homes Act.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and members of the committee. Kevin Canale here on behalf of the Maryland Association of Counties in support of House Bill 805. You heard about the merits of the bill. You heard from the folks doing the great work on the ground, and counties appreciate the ability to partner with these folks and help to stack these benefits to make these projects work. We also appreciate that in the bill, there's a lot of flexibility, but also there are proper guardrails to make sure that this credit works for long-term affordability. That you heard earlier, this is not for flipping. This is to keep people there, to help them get the counseling that they need, sweat equity. I think these are great programs, and we're happy to partner again in ways to make this work, in areas to make it that can work. And then, of course, at fiscal capacity, if there is capacity to do it, we're happy to do it. But appreciate the flexibility. It's a great program, and we'd ask for a favorable report.
Thank you so much to this panel. Looking around for questions, Delegate Wims.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And this question is for Sarah. When you were talking, I think you said they were approximately, the value was around 300-some thousand, but you were selling them for approximately 120,000. Could you explain a little bit about that again?
Yeah, absolutely. So we have, at this particular project, we're selling to folks below 30%, below 40%, and below 50% of area median income. And so we base the first mortgage for each property on each individual family's income. So that, again, as Layla said, they're not paying more than 30% of their income on housing for that first mortgage. And then every property has a silent second for the difference between that first mortgage and the appraisal.
Thank you. And then as a follow-up question, you're saying Habitat is statewide? You have, or what is your area that you work in?
So Metro Maryland works in Montgomery and Prince George's counties.
Okay.
And then Layla's chapter works
in Central Maryland.
And you work together, though?
We are two distinct and separate organizations, yeah. And then we've got about 10 or 11 Habitat affiliates across the state of Maryland and 900 across the U.S.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you, Madam Chair.
All right, a question from Delegate Long.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I understand what you're doing. The question I have is, what about the property tax assessment? If you buy a house that's been vacant for a while, the property tax assessment is going to be lower. Once you put all this money into it, the assessed value is going to go up. How does this work with this? I'm just curious how that would affect the these transactions.
So, I mean, again, it would be essentially the assessed value when it's sold.
I thought I heard you say something about assessed value being 30% of market value or something. That's where I was kind of lost.
Yeah, so essentially, again, so what Habitat is, so Habitat builds the home, and then as they were describing, there's sort of different median incomes that it's tiered at. So, in the Aluminum Place example, 30%, 40%, 50%. So Habitat is essentially, or a developer similar to it, again, that's the way the bill was structured, would be, is the homeowner is being charged essentially, or the home is being assessed at the full value of what the home is market rate essentially, even though that homeowner is really only paying 30% of it. So Habitat, again, a nonprofit or a nonprofit developer has to sit on that other 70% of the cost of the home to make sure that it's affordable for the purchaser. So what this bill would do is enable counties to say, it's not really fair that we're assessing the tax on the transfer at the value, at the market value of the home, because again, in Montgomery County example, so Montgomery County has an MPDU program where the county agrees that these houses cannot be sold, or these homes cannot be sold for more than 30% of area median income, right? The way the county has put it into statute is those homes get recorded in the assessed value as essentially that depressed 30% rate. So when SDAT sees that, they say, okay, that's the assessed value that we're charging the tax on the transfer, right? That needs to be executed at the purchase. Because these homes are at market value, SDAT has no ability, short of creating a whole new process, which frankly, in the fiscal situation that we're in, a program that would have created 10 new pins, just not feasible. So what we worked with SDAT on was to come up with a county enabling bill. So if Montgomery County wanted to say, we know that Habitat is not in the same category as an MPDU, but they're doing basically the same thing, and we want to be able to give them, we want their transfer taxes to reflect that the taxes should only be on 30% of the assessed value instead of the full value when transferred. This would allow them to do that.
Okay, one last question. What happens if someone's living in the house for 10 years? They built up a lot of equity. If they refinance, is that when they have to pay the second off?
Yeah, so every Habitat is structured differently, but for us, yes. If they're, paying off their mortgage, typically they don't though. I mean, folks are not generally refinancing because we have a 0% interest mortgage.
Well, so that's a good point.
Yeah. We also have appreciation sharing on top of a silent second. So there's a lot of layers to make sure that folks are able to build equity, but that the subsidy is also protected in that house.
Okay, thank you.
And again, this would only be a one-time credit, so it's not locked in perpetuity. It's, the end of the first year to allow Habitat or the developer to recoup some of those costs on the front end.
Thank you.
All right, any more questions? Seeing none, that ends the bill hearing on House Bill 805. Thank you, Delegate, and thank you to this panel.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I do just want to thank your council in particular, was very helpful in drafting this bill and getting it right. It's very technical, and appreciate the help on that end. Thank you.
Stan is a rock star. Thank you, Stan. All right, next bill is Delegate Roberson, House Bill 734, Property Tax Agricultural Use Assessment.
Okay. Good afternoon, Madam Chair. Good afternoon, Ways and Means Committee. For the record, I'm Delegate Kent Roberson here to speak on HB 734, which is a property tax for community solar energy generating systems. But in particular, I want to take a line from my colleague, Delegate Patterson, who says that interns are here for an experience. So if it's okay with the chair, my intern will be testifying on my behalf for this bill. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair and members of the Ways and Means Committee. I am Jana Tunjan, an honors second-year cybersecurity intelligence management scholar with a minor in finance from Prince George's County, Maryland, attending the National Treasure, Morgan State University. And I serve as a legislative aide for Delegate Kent Roberson. And today I am here to testify on House Bill 734 on behalf of the delegate. House Bill 734 is a bill concerning agrivoltaics, which is the dual use of land for both agricultural production and solar energy generation. Agrivoltaics is permitted in Maryland already, and this bill does not establish a new policy. Instead, it ensures that existing policy functions smoothly and consistently. Specifically, House Bill 734 extends the deadline for community solar energy generating systems to receive approval from the Maryland Public Service Commission from December 31st, 2025 to December 31st, 2030 in order to qualify for agricultural use assessment. This adjustment aligns the development timeline for agrivoltaics community solar projects with Maryland's agricultural property tax framework and ensures stakeholders are operating under a clear and predictable schedule. This alignment is important because agrivoltaic projects are more complex than traditional solar developments. They require additional planning, coordination with farmers, longer development timelines, and higher upfront costs. Without consistent deadlines, these projects face increased financial risk and uncertainty. Extending the approval deadline to 2030 provides needed predictability, reduces risk, and gives community solar agrivoltaic projects sufficient time to fully develop and succeed. Agrivoltaic offers significant benefits to Maryland. They allow farmers to continue farming their land, protect soil health and farmland, help stabilize farm income, produce clean energy, and support food security and rural economies, all while advancing the state's renewable energy goals. In summary, House Bill 734 is a technical housekeeping measure that preserves existing policy, improves statutory consistency, and provides agrivoltaic community solar projects the time necessary to succeed. For these reasons, I respectfully urge a favorable report on House Bill 734. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the committee. That was wonderful, very nicely done. It's really cool to see interns getting the chance to do this. My name is Kelly Buchanan, and I am a Senior Policy and Strategy Manager for Lightstar Renewables. We are a community solar developer based out of Boston, but we have a very strong interest in Maryland solar, specifically agrivoltaics. We have 121 megawatts of agrivoltaic projects in development across 14 counties in Maryland, and we've been working since the beginning on agrivoltaics policy to ensure that there is a consistent definition framework. And in 2025, that definition was changed to include agricultural use assessment qualification as a minimum standard for agrivoltaic projects. This is important because it ensures that agrivoltaic projects will be treated like any other farm in the state of Maryland. They're required to meet the same standards. And to level set, in short, agrivoltaics is simply the integrated use of a single parcel of land for both solar and energy production. And what that means in reality is that we farm in between and underneath the panels within the array space. And typically, Lightstar has projects that either produce commodity crops like soy, wheat, and things like hay for either animals on farm or grazing. And then we also specialize in specialty crops as well. These are really exciting projects. They offer more than just one benefit to Maryland. You know, you have your clean energy production, but we also know that there is immense pressure on development in the state, not just for solar, but also for housing, as well as farmland protection. And so I've always said that if you can do more than one thing at once, why not? And that is the value add with agrivoltaics. Extending the deadline for qualification out to 2030 would match with other sections of statute. Agrivoltaics is eligible for a personal property tax exemption as well. And so having that consistency as well as the runway in order to make these projects work and bring them to fruition in Maryland would be very helpful. And I respectfully urge the committee to issue a favorable report on House Bill 734. Thank you very much, and happy to take questions.
Madam Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee, Rory Murray here on behalf of Lightstar Renewables as well. The only thing I'll add is the reason the extension is necessary, the property tax exemption ran out December 31st of last year, but as was said in the initial testimony, these projects are just very complex, and we had to basically build the framework in Maryland over that time period to make them happen. So we weren't able to get any projects in the ground during that pilot period. So adding an extra 5 years is basically like an agrivoltaics pilot period, which I think was the intent of the initial legislation when it passed. Thanks.
Thank you so much to this panel. I see a question from Delegate Hartman.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for bringing the bill forward. It's certainly an interesting concept. From what I understand, it could be animals or it could be planted crops. Has there been any studies done to see if there's anything leaking from solar panels or anything that would contaminate the ground that could be harmful, for the crops that would absorb them and then human consumption, ingesting them? What kind of studies have been done in that regard?
Thank you for the question. I am not aware of any specific studies off the top of my mind. What I do know is that these solar panels are fully contained and they do not contain any toxic chemicals that I am aware of. They do have rare earth elements, but we interact with those things quite often in our daily life. I will also say that we train our farmers to maintain safety within the array, and so we ensure that their equipment can safely pass in between the rows of panels, as well as having enough room to turn around at the end of a row, in between the array fence, which is agricultural fencing in our case, and the edge of the panel. So when you keep those panels contained, you really reduce any sort of risk associated with contamination if it were to occur, but these things are also decommissioned appropriately, and so at the end of their useful lifetime, we have a bond with the county that ensures that those panels will either be taken away and disposed of, or they will be recycled, because there's a great deal of value associated with those panels right now in the marketplace, as well as the steel associated in that construction. So from my perspective, there is very little risk associated with either damage to the environment or damage to human health associated with what's contained in the solar panel.
So back to my question, have there been any studies done or anything on that issue?
I'm sure there have been, sir. I don't have any at the top of my head.
Could somebody follow up with that?
I would be happy
I'd be interested
to.
in seeing that. Thank you.
And before we move on, there is one person that signed up that I don't think we've heard from. Is Justin Idolot here? Okay, come on up. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Chairwoman and Ways and Means Committee, I really don't have much to add. I think they really kind of hit the high points. I'm here actually to represent kind of the farmer's perspective. In addition to being the CEO of Good Idea Solar, I also looked at this on my farm. And so what you will find is the state is continuing to deploy more renewable energy and towards our net zero goal for 2035. This is something that you're going to see an additional wave of farmer interest as they can continue to manage their farm and agriculture, in addition to giving back to their community with local renewable energy that is produced in their community and goes to their community. So for that, I recommend a favorable ask for this. I'm sorry, Justin Idolot with CEO of Good Idea Solar. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Delegate Young.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Question for anybody is, would hydroponics qualify as agrivoltaic? I'm thinking about, I represent Baltimore City, we don't have farmland, but we might have some hydroponics, or we might have some pocket farms, or, community gardens. Would that potentially qualify?
That's a good question. Under COMAR for the agricultural use assessment, there's a lot of standards based on mostly by acreage. How many animals are on an acre, what the crop production is on the acre, what the income is made per acre. But happy to take a look at it. I'm not all too sure off the top of my head.
I think we're looking at trying to increase our own food production in the city, and all the avenues would be something we would want to have access to. So we would hope, I would hope that we would be able to potentially expand that definition or include it.
Yeah, interesting question.
Yeah, and I'll just note that hydroponics are usually used inside buildings.
No, it's both.
And so.
In and out.
Yeah, and as long as the solar is also, for this, as long as solar is also included.
But that's what I would hope. If we got a hydroponic setup on a vacant lot.
Right.
Outside, and then we threw solar on top.
Right.
Could it qualify? That's
Got you. Okay.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you so much. Delegate Buckle.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So, Delegate Robertson, I think it's important to understand this. This relates to the agrivoltaics, because what we're hearing an awful lot of is some opposition to certain solar developments. I'm opposing one myself in my district. It's not, to my knowledge, an agrivoltaic process or property hasn't been marketed as such. It's just simply taking hundreds and hundreds of acres that sort of adjoin sort of an agriculture on a residential community and putting panels all over them, and the neighbors don't want it. But this seems to be supported, is that correct, supported by the Farm Bureau because they think that this enables them to keep land in productive use while still getting some economic value from having solar there. Is that what agrivoltaics is really the differentiation between just a regular solar project versus one of these projects?
Correct, exactly. So that way you're in, and I'm sure they might want to weigh in as well, but definitely, so you're also receiving the income from having a solar because we provided those benefits there, but also you're still providing the farmland that we so desperately need as well, with not only in the state and the nation. And something I'm definitely in agreement with you on as far as ensuring that we preserve that farmland as a state.
And the value of this is that the land itself, the real property, is assessed at the more favorable agricultural rate, so that helps with the sort of financing or the pencil out of the project, because the property taxes aren't jumping through the roof because it's now viewed as sort of industrial or commercial use. Is that sort of the rationale behind it?
That's correct. And I'm glad you brought that up because it also goes to what Delegate Young was raising as far as if, certain areas in Baltimore City, because it has to be zoned based on USDA's land as far as an agricultural land. So it's not just something you've created, but for this.
You have to qualify as agriculture,
Correct.
which that may, there's some areas, certainly the city, Delegate Young's more familiar than me. I lived there for about 7 years. There's certainly some areas that are more rural, open spaces, green spaces, not as many, but some. And then the other final question I had, so I looked at one of the concerns of the Coalition for Community Solar Access, which frankly I probably would never pay a whole heck of a lot of attention to, but they seem to make a pretty good point about one of the issues is that the timing mismatch, where the developer goes in, they apply for the credit, they get told, yes, we're gonna get the credit, but then SDAT has to review the actual implemented property and say, is this still agricultural enough, or did you, really change it afterward? And their suggestion is that SDAT could approve the plan at the time of the application for the credit or to qualify for the project. And then obviously SDAT would have to come back when it's all built and say, yep, this looks like what you put on paper. It is sufficiently agricultural to qualify for the assessment change. It's not paving things over with, concrete and rock and then putting them in. Do you think that amendment, or does the industry think that amendment may actually make this more useful?
Yeah, I'll let panelists.
Yes, they did bring it up to us. I told them to do a little more legwork, reach out to SDAT, see if SDAT can already do that, or if they need more clear language saying they could do it, and to make sure there'd be no fiscal impact from the SDAT side, and we'd see it as a friendly amendment.
Okay, because I hate to see businesses or anybody go out and expend a bunch of money and then at the end be told, oh yeah, that didn't work anyway because government didn't talk to each other essentially. So thank you. I appreciate the clarification.
Yep, thank you.
Thank you, Delegate. Delegate Miller.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Delegate, for bringing the bill. I just had a couple questions. One is in the Farm Bureau, and I'm trying to picture how this would work. In their letter, they said that there could be crop production beneath and around, and that speaks to what you were saying as far as around, and you said there were fencing and fencing around the edge, but that's not beneath, particularly if you're doing crop production with the equipment beneath. I understand what you were saying about the lanes and the turnaround. So could you speak a little bit about what it actually looks like then?
Sure, I would be happy to. And then we can also send around some pictures just for the committee's interest and for fun, because it is really incredible. The way that these systems are designed, the panels are typically two in portrait. So you have one panel up top, one panel down below, and then they track with the sunlight. So they're moving throughout the day to get the optimal amount of energy production. But that also means that when they're at their full tilt, it's typically about 10 feet from top to bottom. So you are able to operate your agricultural equipment quite close to the post or what's underneath that tracking system in the middle of the panel. So we, for example, on one of our hay projects in New York, there's a photo of the tractor about, 2 or 3 feet from the post. So we get very close up underneath the panel, so there's very little lost ground when it comes to farming. And then the space in between the rows is typically between 30 to 40 feet. So there is plenty of room for production in between, and as well as safe passage of the equipment. And we take each individual farmer's equipment into consideration when designing the array so that they're not going out and having to acquire new pieces of equipment because they're so expensive. From the panel edge to the fence, the amount of space there can vary pretty widely. At minimum, it would again be 30 to 40 feet to ensure there's plenty of room to operate and turn around that equipment safely.
Okay, thank you. And then is there any, and you mentioned that they tilt, so is there any incentive, or would it be a part of putting it on the buildings? And I know, has anything changed as far as needing the foundation part for the building? Because, using rooftops and things like that on the farm, or would that not apply under this category then?
It theoretically could apply through the community solar program. Lightstar is primarily a commodity crop and specialty, so veg and things like that, agrivoltaics developer, so we don't often jump into the rooftop area. I'd be happy to follow up with you regarding more information.
That would be great, because it would seem like it would be a smart combination to use both. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you so much. Delegate Long.
Yeah, I would love to see some of these pictures of how these lay out. So what kind of crop, and is it something that's annual? Can you tell me what kind of crop they would put underneath these solar panels?
Of course, all sorts. You can do things, in Maryland, most of our projects plan to be producing hay, soy, and wheat. Any combination of those or rotation, especially when you get to soy, you're usually rotating with something like wheat. The only thing that we typically cannot do is a traditional field corn because it is so tall. The steel cost to raise the panels high enough to avoid them running into each other would be prohibitive, at least for Lightstar. But we are working on shorter growing corn varieties that may be compatible. Places like New Jersey, Rutgers University is doing quite a bit of research on the productivity of vegetable production under these panels, as well as soy. And their first round of results that were released last summer showed favorable production for things like summer squash, zucchini, bell peppers, eggplant, as well as soy. The soy in particular did very well. What we've found through peer-reviewed research is that the panels can create a microclimate, and so there's a little bit of insulation and protection from whatever is going on in the environment, whether that be an extremely hot and dry summer. So you're retaining a little bit more moisture and water underneath those panels because they're not getting baked totally in the sunlight. They've got a little bit of shade. But on the other end of that, it also can protect from a heavy rain or a hail event. So in short, we've also seen people do orchards. Those are a little bit more boutique and specialized, but a lot of things can work, including sheep and cows as well.
Thank you. I was just curious. And one last question. If you plant crops, is there a problem with the wiring going from the solar panels to wherever it's being stored? I mean, this is a neat idea, but I would love to see some of this being put in place. But
yeah.
Is there a problem with planting?
No, no. So typically what we do, either the wires are managed very closely on the panel, so everything is very tidy if you're working with animals that are grazing under the array and put away so that they're not at risk of injury or harm. In the case of crop agrivoltaics, we're typically trenching our cables a little bit more deeply into the earth so that they are safely mapped out, so everyone knows where they are, but also not in danger of being run over during tillage or things like that, or planting, because no one would like to be harmed that way either.
I'm sure that they wouldn't be. Thank you.
No.
Delegate Coley.
Madam Chair, thank you. I just want to have one more question. With regard to the USDA at the federal level, you all have looked at the movement away from solar projects on farmland, and these projects are okay, is that correct?
That's a bit of a nuanced question. So that's something that we're working on actively at the federal level. We would love to see a definition of agrivoltaics put into the Farm Bill. That's something that we've asked for. It would help solve an issue with USDA funding and technical guidance. Right now, based on the definition of solar, it is a commercial and industrial use, and so it would then negate your ability to qualify for that funding and technical guidance. We don't think that should be the case. These are farmers doing what other farmers do, just in a slightly different circumstance. In terms of ensuring that things move forward accurately and well, it's something that we're working through actively with our federal delegation.
All right, seeing no additional questions, that ends the bill hearing on House Bill 734. Thank you so much, Delegate, for the bill, and thank you to this panel for your time.
Yeah, can we give our intern a hand just for her coming from Morgan State? Thank you.
Thank you. She did an excellent job. All right, next bill is Delegate Ebersol, House Bill 736, Alcohol Beverage Tax, Ready-to-Drink Cocktails. You do have a few witnesses signed up on this bill, Delegate. All right, I have Emily Smith and Monica Pierce.
Hello, everyone. Taking the broken chair so you don't get it comes off. Good afternoon, Madam Chair, members of my fine committee. Great to have you guys here. I'm Eric Ebersol, for the record. I'm bringing before you a bill that has been seen before in its general form by this committee. It's a bill that seeks to establish some equity in taxing of alcohol. Alcohol is taxed at the point of sale, but it's also taxed as an excise tax. And it's taxed at different levels depending on which alcohol is being sold. There are three general categories: spirits, whiskey, gin, things like that, wine, and then there's also beer. Now, they do have different alcohol levels, and it seems to me that the law was established to take a look at sort of the intensity of the alcohol, or what we call ABV, of those drinks when they established the excise tax. It's done by the gallon. And so spirits are taxed at a rate of $1.50 for each gallon. Now, if you don't know much about drinking, they have a lot of alcohol in them, usually a minimum of 40%, sometimes as much as 50 to 55%, depending on how robust you are when you're drinking them. Wine usually falls in the 10 to 15% range, somewhere like 12% quite often, and it's taxed at a rate of 40 cents per gallon. And beer, well, if you drink a Natty Boh, it can be about 4%, 4.5%. You can get up to around 10. It's still pretty drinkable at that level. And beer is taxed at a rate of 9 cents per gallon. We have a new category of drinks that we've become interested in America. They're called RTDs, ready-to-drink cocktails. The Brits have been doing it for quite a while. If you read a British novel, you're going to find them talking about getting a can of gin and tonic to drink on the train on the way home, okay? The Girl on the Train was the book that I'm speaking of. Those have spirits in them quite often, also wine on some occasions, and some other things, like some of them have seltzer water with alcohol sort of added into them with their flavor. But all of them are called ready-to-drink cocktails. Because they're ready-to-drink cocktails, and because they sometimes include spirits, they're currently taxed at the same rate as spirits are. But they're nowhere near the amount of alcohol. And so what you're getting taxed, when that excise tax is being paid on a good deal, is the filler and not the alcohol in this case. And so this bill attempts to establish some equity. Now, I will tell you that the ask here was pretty reasonable, because RTDs tend to fall in that range too, somewhere around, well, it depends which ones you're looking at, but they're kind of in the beer range. The seltzer ones can be as low as 3 or 4, 4.5%. Some of the ones that are like gin and tonics can run up to 7 to 10%. I'm sure there's some that are a little higher, but they tend to fall in the beer range. So you could argue that because they're selling something that has about that alcohol content, they should be about 9 cents a gallon. We've come in at 60. So we're saying, okay, it's still a spirit. We're kind of in between. We're gonna take a good run. Now, I think this is a good bill for us to discuss what excise tax we put on alcohol. And you're gonna see in the fiscal policy note, this would probably cost us some money if we did this. I don't think it would hurt for us to take a more serious look at this bill and look at maybe taxing more by alcohol by volume when we take a look at them. There's precedent for this. When we talk about spirits, once they get over what we call 100 proof, which if you're at the proof is always twice the amount of alcohol, 50%, then a certain amount of money, how much, is added for each point, each proof point above. I've got it circled here somewhere. An additional tax, one proof over 100 proof is 15 cents for each gallon. So they're initially paying $1.50, but if you're 101 proof, then you pay $1.65 per gallon. So there is precedent for using alcohol by volume as establishing a tax. It only establishes a part of it here, but it's something for us to look at. But for now, I think it's important for us to acknowledge that ready-to-drink cocktails are indeed not hard liquor. That's not a bottle of hard liquor that you're buying. You're buying something that's mixed with something. And I think considering a adjustment to the excise tax rate would be in order. And so I thank you and urge favorable report. Thanks.
Okay, thank you, Chair Wilkins, Vice Chair Feldmark, and members of the committee. I'm Emily Smith from the Distilled Spirits Council of the United States, a national trade association representing producers and marketers of distilled spirits sold in the U.S. in support of HB 736, and we thank Delegate Ebersol for his leadership on this issue. In 2025, there were approximately 86 million cases of spirits-based RTDs sold in the United States. Increasingly, adult consumers continue to choose spirits-based RTDs because of their convenience, premium spirits, fresh ingredients, and low ABV. Unfortunately, Maryland spirits producers pay a much higher tax rate to produce a spirits-based RTD, even if it's at the exact same or similar ABV as a malt-based, sugar-based, or wine-based RTDs. For example, at 5% ABV, the tax rate on a spirits-based RTD is about 17 times the tax rate of a malt-based product. I would like to highlight that the HB 36 proposes a 50% higher tax rate for spirits-based RTDs compared to similar legislation. That's still 1.5 times higher than the wine tax rate and almost 7 times higher than the beer tax rate. We're not looking for equal tax treatment with beer and wine. We're just asking for a more level playing field and a more fair tax structure for products of similar alcohol content. Our economic analysis indicates that Maryland would realize more than $5.1 million in new tax revenue from this category over the next 3 to 5 years, based on the 60% excise tax rate and also Maryland's current 9% sales tax rate. Keep in mind, spirits-based RTDs yield 2 to 3 times the amount of sales taxes per unit compared to beer or malt-based RTDs. As this category continues to grow, Maryland will realize new revenues. Thank you for your time today and consideration of this important tax disparity issue in Maryland's alcohol taxation scheme.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Monica Pierce. I'm here in support of this bill. I own and founded 10th Ward Distilling Company based out of Frederick, Maryland. We actually turned 10 this year. Very proud of that. We started canning cocktails as a part of our business practices during COVID in a way to provide cocktails in a safer form for our consumers to have them in their homes where they couldn't be exposed to COVID at the time. And it quickly grew into its own thing. What we learned also quickly was that Maryland's tax structure made it difficult for us to compete in the market. So we did a few things. We tried to cut costs during things like tariffs and supply chain shortages. We even purchased our own canning line. We have now been contract canning for other Maryland distilleries, about 3 or 4 here in the state, on and off, also all experiencing very similar challenges when it comes to the tax disparity. Something I want to be clear about, which we've talked about, is that ABV is ABV. Alcohol is defined as being ethanol, whether it's beer, wine, or spirits. And I have a little beautiful display here with my winter pomegranate apple cocktail that you will nicely sip on. You're not going to chug this. It is a high-end product. And then a Trogs 11% holiday Mad Elf brewed beer that will inevitably get a consumer more inebriated just because of the ABV level, also just the size of the can, also being taxed significantly lower, as we discussed. This is creating an unfair advantage for Maryland distilleries. Alcohol isn't being defined accurately anymore, especially with the growth of things like seltzers, hard Mountain Dew, whatever you might see on the shelf that might be malt-based. RTDs are also more expensive to make. I'm not just fermenting grain like a beer might be. I'm also then distilling it and then blending it and proofing it and mixing it with ingredients. So my margins are tighter, my cost is higher, and we are in a much more economically challenging point than we have been in the past when we've submitted bills like these. We're competing against the legalization of marijuana, dealing with government shutdowns, et cetera. And I just thank you for being here to hear me out as a small local business.
Thank you so much, and thanks to this panel of witnesses. We will take questions. Delegate Buckle.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So the 9% sales tax to the consumer is applied to everybody. That's if you get a Jack Daniel's cocktail at a restaurant, or if you buy a 6-pack of beer at a liquor store, or if you buy these ready-to-drink. Is that correct, Delegate Eversole? That's that 9% tax is applied.
I'll defer to the experts, but I buy a little alcohol and I always pay 9%.
Right, that's what I'm saying. So,
Yes.
so this is different than this. So this is, in addition to the 9% sales tax, this is an upfront tax from
On production, so we pay per gallons.
Yeah, the producer distributor to the retailer essentially is paying that upfront.
But what the consumer is getting hit by is the higher price point that we have to place in order to pay for those taxes.
That's what I was getting at, is in my experience in business, at least, the vast majority of businesses have to pass along their taxes or regulatory costs unless their profit margin is just so huge that they can absorb it. In your guys' experience in the industry, are you mainly passing along these higher costs to the end consumer?
Some of it is, some of it depends on the product. I'll say sometimes we even get to a point where we just barely break even. But I would like to mention that if we got a chance to have a tax reduction on this, we would have the opportunity to be able to bring down the price of the product and then also invest more in sales or sales efforts, thus being able to increase what we sell, pay taxes on, et cetera.
That's kind of where I was going, is the
Yeah.
cost of the drink to your left to the consumer higher than the cost of the drink to your right. I think you said Mad Elf, something like that.
Brewery, Mad Elf.
So the cost of the white can is higher than the other can simply because of the additional upfront tax.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Delegate. We'll go to Delegate Young.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Quick question. Can y'all just tell me if this is being done in any other states, and if so, which ones?
I'm happy to take that one. This is not a new concept. In fact, 25 states provide various tax levels for alcohol based on alcohol content. Some of those will have a tiered tax rate, for example, 30% ABV and less, like your liqueurs and things like that, will get a lower tax rate than the traditional spirits products. And then a number of states have targeted specifically these spirits-based RTDs that are mixed, packaged cocktails. In fact, just this year, Alabama, Arizona, Hawaii, New York, New Jersey, Oregon, Washington are considering tax reform bills. And in the most recent years, Michigan, Nebraska, and Vermont also have enacted changes that have brought the spirits-based RTD rate down.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Any other questions for these witnesses? All right, thank you so much to this panel. We do have two testifying in opposition to this bill. In person, we have Lorenzo Bellamy. You can come up. And then we have a virtual witness, and if that person is on the line, we'll bring them in. Brian Crawford. And you can go ahead, Lorenzo.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Madam Chair and members of the committee. My name is Lorenzo Bellamy, and I'm here in opposition to House Bill 736. I represent the Wine Institute, which is a trade association of California wineries representing more than 1,000 wineries and associate members. We are opposed to House Bill 736, which will reduce the tax on spirit-based ready-to-drink cocktails from the current $1.50 per gallon to 60 cents per gallon. The tax rate for table wine is 40 cents per gallon. This bill would redefine ready-to-drink cocktails as those containing distilled spirits mixed with non-alcoholic beverages, but they may also contain wine. They must contain 12% or less alcohol by volume, or ABV, and be sold in metal cans no larger than 16 ounces. Wineries, breweries, and distilleries have introduced creative new products that blur historical lines between wine, beer, and spirits. Beer and wine products generally fit into existing alcohol tax categories, but states are now being asked to set new tax rates on spirit-based products driven solely by ABV. Let me be clear that RTDs, in our opinion, are distilled spirits and should remain at the $1.50 tax rate. The fiscal note indicated that this would, if you reduce it to the 60 cents per gallon, that the hit to the state revenues is about $2 million. House Bill 736 proposes to drop the tax rate on spirit-based RTDs by 60%, based entirely on ABV, without regard to the producer and raw materials used. I think a broader discussion regarding appropriate ABV limits and tax treatment of all products needs to occur before Maryland deviates from long-standing alcohol tax policy. I've had a nice conversation with the sponsor of this bill, and we agree that this is a starting point and that needs to be more discussion about this. So we look forward to working with the delegate and the sponsor and this committee and others to reach an equitable solution that we think would benefit the alcohol, wine, and beer and spirits industry across the board. So for those reasons, we urge an unfavorable vote on this bill. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bellamy. We'll proceed with Mr. Crawford.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the committee. I appreciate the opportunity to address HB 736. My name is Brian Crawford. I'm the president of the Beer Institute, a national trade association representing brewers of all sizes and beer importers whose products are sold to consumers in Maryland. The beer industry is proud to support more than 35,000 jobs and provide more than $1.9 billion in wages and benefits for Marylanders. It's important to note at the outset that while our members primarily brew beer, they also manufacture some of the country's leading canned cocktails. They enter into that market understanding and complying with Maryland's existing beer, wine, and spirits tax structure, and they oppose this unnecessary tax break. HB 736 would reduce the tax rate on canned cocktails made by hard liquor by 60%, and it would come at the exact wrong time for the state of Maryland. Maryland is already facing a projected shortfall of $1.4 billion in FY27 and $3 billion in FY28, and as previously noted, the fiscal note states that this bill would result in a loss of $2 million annually to the state treasury. Ultimately, Maryland consumers and our state's bottom line would be the ones most hurt by this proposal. How do we know this? It was Maryland's own Alcohol and Tobacco Commission 2023 study on ready-to-drink alcohol tax report that analyzed tax cuts passed in Michigan and Nebraska for canned cocktails. The report found that similar legislation resulted in lost revenue and higher consumer prices. Notably, consumers in Michigan saw a 44% increase in prices for canned cocktails, while consumers in Nebraska saw a shocking 65% increase after their state passed similar legislation. More than a dozen U.S. states have rejected similar proposals to HB 736 due to concerns about the impact of such legislation. I respectfully urge the committee to consider the ramifications of this proposal and give careful consideration when deliberating on such a significant change to long-held public policy precedent in Maryland. I urge an unfavorable report, and I thank you.
Thank you so much for your testimony. We do have a few questions on this bill. Let's go to Delegate Hartman first.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for being here today. So wouldn't you agree responsible drinking is important?
Responsible drinking is important, yes.
Sure. So, these ready-to-drink cocktails, I think, are pretty cost prohibitive. If you notice, like a 4-pack of them could be $14 or something compared to ready-to-drink wine or something else. And if you go out and get a cocktail, there's significant variation in a bartender's pour from one place to another. So for that reason, I really think these ready-to-drink cocktails that are manufactured and measured consistently, it could be a real game changer as far as somebody's ability to monitor how much they're drinking and things of that nature, because it's consistent. So with the tax rate already 1.5 times that of wine, why are you opposed?
We think that and thank you, Delegate, for that question. I think that the lines are blurred right now with the tax structure. And I think that this would cause confusion among wineries and brewers of wine, makers of wine, whether or not what would be considered a ready-to-drink alcohol versus a wine product. We know that many of the ready-to-drink cocktails do contain wine, and so we're concerned that it would distort the market and actually hurt the wine industry and wineries in general. I do agree with you that responsible drinking is important, and it's possible to your comment about, the categories of RTDs in a confined can could lead to responsible drinking. It's possible, or at least not over drinking.
So then, pretty much, the base is just concern of the industry you protect. I mean, every action has a reaction, so
sure.
I understand it, but I appreciate your answer. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Delegate Buckle.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I really appreciate, Mr. Bellamy, your remark that there's a broader conversation, but I mean, we have to take this issue within this bill, how we deal, how we define alcohol. But I, to be honest, I kind of like the bill, not necessarily from the perspective that was expressed by my colleague, although that's a fine one. But I like promoting job creators, creating jobs here, and I like promoting consumer choice and similar products being treated similarly. And to me, if the ready-to-drink cocktail, which was not something that any of us would have really thought about 10 years ago, 20 years ago, is manipulated in terms of the alcohol content, the amount of whiskey, vodka, whatever that really goes into it, the amount of that pure product, if it's manipulated down to where the alcohol content is basically the same or the same range as wine or beer, I can't figure out why the tax rate wouldn't be the same. I can figure out why the tax rate historically is different for I go out and buy a handle of Jack Daniels and it's 120 proof because it's a higher alcohol-based substance and we've chosen to tax it higher. But if you take that Jack Daniels and you mix it in with 20 other things and water it down and whatever they do to turn it into a lower ABV product, the same as maybe a glass of wine or a beer, why is that taxed differently when wine, as Delegate Hartman pointed out, this proposed bill still has it 1.5 times higher. Beer has it more than 6 times higher. So I want to provide that breaks for wine and beer. I don't want to change their rates. I want them to still have a competitive position. I just don't understand what the opposition is. If the product has changed, so it's kind of the same product, why shouldn't it be taxed similarly?
Well, thank you, Delegate Buckle, for that question. I think one of the issues is that RTDs are defined as distilled spirits. So as a distilled spirit, and distilled spirits are taxed at the $1.50 per gallon, unless you're trying to change the definition of what distilled spirits is, then I think it would remain the same tax category. I think a larger discussion would be to look at I think it was mentioned about the 9% sales tax on alcohol. I think we should probably look at that across the board for all alcohol.
See, I'm a tax cutter, and now I can be a tax cutter with Delegate Ebersol. For the first time in our 12 years on this committee, Ebersol and I can cut taxes together, which is, we'll sing Kumbaya later in the back. But, and I like that, and I understand that's part of that overall conversation. I just always look at it as products evolve, things happen. You're not trying to change the tax rate on pure hard liquor, so to speak, distilled spirits, but you're acknowledging that industry has come up with a different type of product that is more in line with your products, with the gentleman from the Beer Institute, which Maryland has a rich series of breweries. I know that they're going through hard times too, but I think we need to protect them as well. But I just don't get the concept of why don't we try to bring them all more into the same classification category while still giving both of your industries an advantage from a tax structure, just not a 20-to-1, 4-to-1 type advantage. But I appreciate the input.
Thank you.
Delegate Miller.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So to Delegate Buckle's point, and from exactly something you said, is you said that we're blurring historical lines, is what you said in your testimony. And so if we are blurring those historical lines, and as Delegate Buckle said, is creating new classes of these beverages, shouldn't we go ahead and make the adjustment then? Doesn't that make sense? Because it is not just a shot of whatever, whiskey, bourbon, whatever that you want that is in that can.
Delegate, I think the time will come where there will be a discussion. I think this bill starts with that in terms of looking at the tax structure for these new products, RTDs. I just believe that this, lowering it to this level at this point without further discussion and looking at the overall tax structure of all these drinks, including the new RTDs that are coming online now, I think it would be premature to do it this way.
Well, I don't understand what you would be waiting for then, because it's still, is it as high as beer?
It's not as high as beer. It's higher than beer,
It's higher than beer. Is it, what about wine?
It's higher than
Still
wine.
higher than wine. So
But
if
it's
you
lower
are
than-
looking at it from a schematic thing, it seems to make sense of where it would be positioned.
Well, it's defined as a distilled spirit, which is at $1.50. So it's now lowering it to something, some kind of hybrid between distilled spirits and wine.
Because isn't it? Is it only a distilled spirit that is in that can?
No, it contains other things besides that, but it does contain a spirit as well.
Okay, and then a comment about the fiscal note. Usually with a fiscal note, and I think this was more the Beer Institute's comment, with the fiscal note, you are assuming that usually when you're doing it, they probably looked at the sales from a previous point in time. And as the previous panel said, that they would be able to lower their costs, therefore potentially increasing sales. And as this market, and this market is very important to my district, we have a lot of craft distilleries in our district and in my county. And as these new products are coming online, wouldn't it make sense that the sales were going to be increasing, therefore the fiscal note may not be accounting for that?
So I don't want to opine on the analysis of the fiscal note, but I would say that it does say that their revenues would decrease by at least $2 million annually. Whether or not there would be an increase in revenues to the state because of increased sales and more people drinking these kind of drinks, then that's possible. But I'm looking directly at the fiscal note.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, seeing no other questions, thank you so much, Delegate, for bringing this bill, and this ends the bill hearing on House Bill 736. Our final bill of the day, Delegate Lehman, House Bill 753. And yes, please do.
Okay, I have Allison Harrison, William Steinwedel, and Claudia Wilson-Randall. Thank you. Good afternoon, Madam Chair and esteemed members of the House Ways and Means Committee. For the record, I am Delegate Mary Lehman, and I am requesting your support of House Bill 753, which protects homeowners dealing with a terminal illness or other medical hardship from losing their property in a tax sale. This bill idea comes from the heartbreaking experience of the Makni family of Beltsville, whose elderly father, Mr. Abdul Makni, missed his property tax notices and then the window to actually pay his bill while he was battling late-stage cancer. In June of 2025, in Prince George's County Circuit Court, Eskin Law, a tax lien purchaser, took title to the property after it paid the delinquent taxes. The tax lien sale was legal, but it caught the family completely off guard as they were dealing with Mr. Makni's stage 4 colon and stomach cancer and Mrs. Makni's health problems. They were not aware of the court proceeding until it was too late. When Mr. and Mrs. Makni's daughter, Miriam, was made aware of what was going on, she retained an attorney from legal aid, and she raised enough money to pay the tax debt as well as additional fees that Eskin Law said it had incurred. However, Eskin Law declined the family's $15,000 cash offer. Mr. Makni died last September, and 2 months later, citing his passing, Eskin Law successfully petitioned the court to cancel a right of redemption hearing. That hearing might have allowed the family to pay that tax debt and regain title to the home that they have lived in for almost 30 years. Miriam, unfortunately, was not able at the last minute today to join us, but a legal aid attorney is here to attest to the stress that process created for a family battling a catastrophic illness and a tax system that does not acknowledge or make accommodations for terminally ill people or those with medical hardships. So what the bill does is it amends the existing homeowner protection program administered by the Office of the State Tax Sale Ombudsman, which was established to divert vulnerable homeowners from the private tax lien sale process and instead help them pay their taxes and remain in their homes. And it does this in primarily in two ways. First, it adds to the list of people that are eligible for priority enrollment someone experiencing a documented terminal illness or other medical hardship. Secondly, it directs the ombudsman to develop a process allowing an enrolled homeowner to designate a family member or some other representative to communicate and work with the ombudsman on the homeowner's behalf. It also expands eligibility criteria, the existing criteria which says that a home's assessed value has to be $300,000 or less, and it raises that to $450,000. Additionally, the bill directs Baltimore City and all 23 Maryland counties to withhold from sale the dwelling of a homeowner who has a terminal illness or medical hardship documented by a physician who has treated or examined the homeowner. Maryland counties and Baltimore City also may, not shall, but may adopt additional methods for establishing terminal illness or medical hardship for the purpose of preventing a tax sale. Committee members, I think you would agree that no family should have to face the financial and emotional trauma of losing their home at the same time the owner is fighting for his or her life. By amending the homeowner protection law, I hope we can spare other Maryland families from the pain and suffering that my constituents have endured. I respectfully urge a favorable report. Thank you.
Hello, my name is William Steinwhittle. I'm the Deputy Advocacy Director for Homeownership Preservation at the Maryland Legal Aid Bureau. Fortunately or unfortunately, I was the supervising attorney in supervising the attorney that represented Mr. Muckney in this case. We tried our best. We filed a defense to the foreclosure. So basically, Eskin Law filed a complaint to foreclose the right to redeem. We filed a opposition to that. Mr. Eskin's response was, "So is your client going to pay or what?" And I'm not making that up. That was literally his response. As if he wasn't using the courts for the purposes of collecting the bill and throwing out our client. We were able to get a hearing scheduled for November. Unfortunately, Mr. Muckney died before we could get to that hearing. And unfortunately, Mr. Muckney was our client, and he had multiple heirs, so we couldn't continue as counsel in the case. We had to withdraw. And it pains me that he was not able to save his home in this case. However, if this was the only time it had ever would happen, I would not be here today, but it is not. This happens all the time. I had one client who had no idea, who worked for years as a election worker in this state, who we worked for years to save her house. But could not do it because she could not remember who was there to help her. This bill would have allowed her to appoint somebody before she had gotten to the position when she couldn't do that anymore. Finally, I did want to mention that the increase in the homeowners protection program is critical because tax buyers, they move quickly to obtain ownership of houses that are worth a lot of money. So any increase in that amount is going to allow more homeowners to stay in their home over a longer period of time. Thank you, and I testify in strong support of this bill.
Thanks, Bill. Hi, good afternoon. I'm Allison Harris. I'm Director of the Home Preservation Project at the Pro Bono Resource Center of Maryland. I run a tax sale legal prevention program for low-income homeowners. The issues that this bill seeks to resolve are ones that are commonly found in a typical client who comes to me for help. A typical common scenario that kicks off a delinquency and potential tax sale situation is a medical issue. Most of my clients are longtime homeowners over the age of 60. A heart attack, a stroke, a cancer diagnosis, a fall, dementia, anything resulting in a short or prolonged hospital stay is often a precursor to a homeowner falling behind on their taxes. So now we have an older adult behind on their taxes, behind on all their bills, trying to catch up. Fortunately, we have the Homeowner Protection Program just for this situation. However, many older adults don't have a computer or the internet, they're not tech savvy, they're medically frail, they're tired, they are overwhelmed. They need help working through steps of the application process. I have a staff member on my team whose role is just dedicated to helping these clients apply for these kinds of applications, because I've seen firsthand just how hard it can be for older adults in particular to get through the steps, the back and forth with the state tech, the SSTAT, that realistically happens in order to get these applications over the finish line. Finally, I've seen in the last couple of years a lot of homeowners who are not eligible for the Homeowner Protection Program because the value of their home is too high. They're seniors, they've lived in their home for decades, they've paid off their mortgages. Their modest home is suddenly worth dramatically more because, as we all know, our assessments have skyrocketed. These homeowners want to stay and age in place in the comfort of their homes, but the current $300,000 limit has meant that even low-income retirees on a fixed home income cannot afford this, and they cannot access this help. The multi-pronged approach of HB 753 seeks to tackle this all-too-common situation. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Claudia Wilson-Randall. I'm the Executive Director of the Community Development Network of Maryland. We are a statewide network of housing and community development and partners from Garrett all the way to Salisbury, Wacomico County. And it is very common for our network of housing counseling organizations to see people entangled in tax sale. And I would like to speak in strong support of House Bill 753 because this homeowner protection program is really a safety net for these homeowners who are in these entanglements. And the idea that they could designate somebody else to work through these problems is critically important for seniors and people who are facing terminal illness. And I would just urge you to think about your mother, your aunt, your great-grandmothers who are in these situations. We see the same population in Somerset as we do in Baltimore City. These tend to be elderly women of color, and they're struggling and they need support. And this, to me, this bill is a way for us to provide support without any high cost. I will also like to emphasize that there are some counties that have the ability already to do this sort of work. That is, they already know who that is who lives at 1234 Main Street, and they reach out to them and then they say, oh, let's see if we can call a daughter or somebody else who can be here with them. So they have some ability to do this, but this really formalizes that structure, and I think that's, from a legal standpoint, really important, right? They can designate a trusted adult to help them through this process. So I would urge your favorable report for House Bill 753. And thank you so much to also all of our colleagues across the state and legal services partners who have worked with our housing counseling agencies across the state. They've been invaluable in getting people out of these situations. Thank you.
Madam Chair, I have a virtual witness too, I believe.
Yes, I'm gonna actually go with the in-person questions first, and then we'll go to the virtual. If there's more than one, we had 3 signed up. How many are on? Oh, okay. Well, since it's only one on, we'll take the one virtual. Thanks.
Good afternoon. Thank you for the opportunity to testify. My name is Shana Roth-Gormley. I'm a staff attorney at Community Law Center. We're a legal services provider to nonprofit organizations and communities throughout Maryland, and we've seen the negative impacts of the current tax sale system on communities and the way that tax sale contributes to property vacancy and abandonment. H. Bill 753 would continue to move Maryland forward in limiting the negative impacts of tax sale on homeowners, families, and communities You've heard about the positive changes the bill will make to the tax sale process in Maryland, so I won't repeat that. But these changes will help reduce tax sales' potential harm to homeowners while not impacting municipalities' tax collection efforts. This ensures that counties and Baltimore City can continue to collect the revenue, which keeps them running, and at the same time minimizing the harms to Maryland residents, especially those experiencing some of the most difficult and vulnerable moments of their lives. Well, when homeowners are protected and able to receive assistance during tax sale, the whole community benefits by ensuring that we've protected our neighbors and by preventing the loss of generational wealth in a family's home or the creation of a new vacant property through tax sale. So we would urge you to give a favorable report on House Bill 753. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much. I'm just double checking that none of the other virtual witnesses have joined. Okay, we will go into questions. Delegate Hartman.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So to be eligible for the program for the homeowner protection, was medical always a part of that? To have a medical issue or something, terminal illness?
No, not currently.
So it almost seems like there's two different issues. One, raising the limit from 300,000 to 450. But, you had talked about when somebody's going through, horrible times of hospitalization, stroke, all the illnesses that have to be dealing with this. I don't see the correlation of the limit. I mean, somebody that has a $600,000 house whose spouse has passed away, they're in the hospital. I know somebody was an attorney, and I saw their name in the paper for a tax sale, and they were going through medical issues. But, why is there a tie to giving somebody a break because they have medical issues to low income or, a lower cost house versus anybody that has a terminal illness? How is there equity in that?
Thank you for the question.
You're saying that we can do this for somebody that has a $400,000 house, but not somebody with a $600,000 house.
Thank you for the question, Delegate Hartman. I think, as you've heard, assessments have gone up significantly. I believe the $300,000 is the original figure in law when this office was established, and I think the belief is that it is time to raise that, but I would like some of my witnesses to speak to that if they would.
The median home value in as of March 2025 in Maryland is $420,000, which means that the $300,000 is way out of whack with the current values of home in Maryland. In addition, I think the reason why these issues were combined is because both of them were present in Ms. McKinney's case. So it's a way to resolve both issues together because her house was worth a lot of money. It was in Prince George's County, and it was caused because of the illness of her father. So I think this was a way to combine the two issues that she faced and make sure that the person in the future doesn't face the same issues.
Thanks for the answer. I'm just, you talk about the medical events being the precursor to the problems, and I would agree that's the case. And then you're also talking about having the ability to have somebody else intervene for them. But a POA would do that already, and we could all have a POA at this point, correct?
I also provide estate planning services for low-income homeowners, and I can tell you that most people do not have that in place. Certainly, if they did, it would be possible, but most people realistically, particularly low-income homeowners, do not have estate planning documents. They don't have a POA in place. And it's actually not necessarily the person on the POA they would want. It might be a different decision. It might be that at this point in time, they have their neighbor, they're just thinking about this as doing this application, they want their neighbor. Or for example, we do this at my office. We are not people's POA, but we have this particular knowledge to be able to help people, so we will do that. So I think it's a different also choice of who you would want to do it than who you want your POA, which is a very serious decision. And this is, you might be someone who's more accessible to you on a daily basis, who you'd want to help.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much, Delegate Polakovich-Carr.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Delegate Lehman, for bringing the bill. So I wanted to ask about a particular term that's in the bill, medical hardship, and I didn't see a definition. Did I miss that? Is that term defined in the bill or in underlying statute?
It's, so that's a great question, Delegate Polakowicz-Carr. The only specification is that if it is something other than a terminal illness, that in either case, it has to be documented by a physician that has actually seen the homeowner. But other than that, there is not an additional description or definition of a medical hardship.
Okay. And I'll preface my next question with saying that there might be some value in having some statewide continuity, because please, somebody correct me if I'm wrong here, but my read of the bill is that right now, the way the bill is drafted, that each local government could actually decide what qualifies as a medical hardship. Is that the intention? Or maybe would you be open to, we could, direct, I'm guessing this is SSTAT, who would maybe need to promulgate some regulations, so maybe it's more some consistency across the state?
I think those are good points, and that would be something for the ombudsman. If you have some idea about tightening up the language, I would certainly be open to that. Given your expertise, I think you heard, for example, one scenario of a homeowner having maybe issues with memory loss, dementia, and you would hope before it gets to that point that they would have a homeowner would have the wherewithal to designate someone to act on their behalf. But I can think of some other medical hardship situations that would make sense, but obviously that's a very broad term, and so I appreciate you raising the issue.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Delegate. Delegate Long, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The question I have is the power of attorney would be so specific it'd only be dealing with property taxes?
There's different types of powers of attorney. Yes, for example, we do financial powers of attorney where people could deal with property taxes, yes.
So my concern is if it's a broad power of attorney, that person could do some
well, that's why people need to be very careful with their powers of attorney.
I just thought maybe there might have been some type of power of attorney would be specifically for taxes.
I would think in this purpose, for this purpose, SSTAT would have it would not be a power of attorney. They would develop a form that someone could sign. For example, I don't know if you remember a few years ago during the homeowner assistance fund, there was a COVID era relief fund that was administered through the state DHCD. They had an agreement that the homeowner could sign allowing us, for example, housing counselors, legal services representatives, to act on their behalf, to work with the state on their behalf. And I imagine that it's that SSTAT, the Ombudsman's office, would do something like that, an agreement specific for this application.
Okay, thank you.
There was also a law passed a couple years ago that created sort of an area between sort of guardianship and you making every decision. It's sort of like specialized decision makers. I don't remember so the law has already sort of covered that you don't have to give up everything. You can sort of be selective and give up what you need to get the assistance that you need.
Thank you so much. I don't see any additional questions, and I don't think we've had any other virtual witnesses.
Assisted decision making, sorry, that was what I was trying to recall.
No problem. Thank you. That concludes the bill hearing on House Bill 753. We did actually have Kevin Canali signed up favor with amendment, but I didn't see him in the room, so I didn't call him, but I'll just say that for the record. Thank you so much again.
Thank you.
Colleagues, that ends the bill hearings for today. And I'll see everyone tonight or tomorrow.